Hey everybody, this is Russ Carson Jr. with Family Tree Nuts, and I am right smack dab in the middle of the Cumberland Gap. The Cumberland Gap, as you know, is an extremely historical location used for thousands of years by Native Americans as a trade route. And of course it was the gateway into the frontier country of the Kentucky and the West in general. Of course, Thomas Walker did pass through the gap in 1750 with his party that was doing exploration in Kentucky. Then, of course, it was used by the Long Hunters in the late 1760s and the 1770s by Daniel Boone and all his men that he was bringing, and women that he was bringing into the Kentucky country to Fort Boonesborough, and all the explorers that went on to Fort Herod and into Kentucky itself. It's said that about 300,000 immigrants passed through this gap here in about a 30-year stretch. Mostly those were Anglo-Americans, Scots-Irish, German immigrants were the main folks that were passing through, coming out of Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina mainly, some out of Maryland along the Wilderness Road. The road was constructed to be, in 1790, the Wilderness Road was commissioned to be constructed, made for wagon passage. So you can imagine just enough room for a wagon passage to get through here. The amount of effort and time that it would take to clear a path with axes wide enough to do that is absolutely amazing. You can see that the gap is not very long. I don't know what you can see in the video here, but it's basically just a small pass in between two ridge lines. There's a ridge line over my shoulder there. There's another ridge line over my shoulder over here. It's amazing to think about the journey that our pioneer ancestors made into the absolute frontier, carrying every single thing that they owned, carrying their chickens, their axes, their dishes, their knives and forks, their weapons, everything that they wanted to have in the new country. You think about how desperate they might have been where they came, or they just maybe were in for a tremendous adventure and the hope of a better life on the frontier land. So I'm going to take you up to the Scenic Overlook before we finish the video so you can kind of see the layout of the land here, but I wanted to show you how narrow the pass was itself that went through here, and how exciting it was to think about your ancestors, because there are many millions of us that our ancestors passed right through this gap. So I wanted to bring that to you, and we'll take a look up top. So here we are up here at the Scenic Overlook, and you can see down over my shoulder that cut right there in between the mountains is the actual Cumberland Gap. Kentucky's over here. You can see Tennessee and Virginia on this side over there. So you can see how much of a narrow gap that was and how it was impassable to cross over those mountains behind me there. So so many of our ancestors, like I said, over 300,000 passed right through that little gap in the mountains and into the frontier and into the West. So remember, Family Tree Nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.